Hey everyone, and welcome to that update of the Eurovest movement, Rick. Tonight, I would like to give an update about what's happening in Canada, especially. We have give a bit of updates about different issues people are facing in Canada, which I think are going to be um, something that is quite common around the world. So yeah, please introduce, say hello, just write a comment and say where you're from. So we know a little bit who's with us tonight, and welcome everyone. So I would like to introduce you to Tracey. Tracey, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Hi, Roman.
Hello. Hi. How are you today? Oh.
Hi.
What's happening?
I don't know what happened.
Okay. So I think everyone can hear you. So can you introduce yourself a little bit and just say about why did you came in the Yellow Vest movement in Canada, and what are you expecting from the Yellow Vest movement so far?
Okay. Personally, my reason for getting involved is my passion for the homeless and for children. And in a first world country like Canada, I feel homelessness should not exist. And the sad fact is it exists even with our veterans that fought for our country, for all our rights. Many of them are living on the streets, homeless. Also, with a lot of things that have been changed in our bills, like C-74, I believe it is, might be C-75, is basically charges that have been lessened as far as assaults on children. So let's say instead of it could have been a 25-year sentence previously for rape or murder of a child, now they basically get a slap on the hand for crimes against children in Canada. A lot of people are not even aware of this. So this is one reason why I felt I must get involved with the Yellow Vest to help bring awareness.
So what's your background? What job are you doing? Like, what makes you like so passionate about this topic?
Well, from a young age, I've always loved children, passion for children. From the time probably when I started babysitting at like 12. And it has always just grown. So I was a hairstylist, my first profession. Then I went to factory work, and now and I take and a total of 5 children from the ages of 1 year old. So I think it was really my calling.
Okay. So what are you currently doing in Canada? Like, what's the state of the Yellow Vest movement in Canada according to you?
I'm sorry, Roman, can you repeat that?
What's happening with the Canadian Yellow Vest movement according to you?
Well, we are very young. A lot of people are still not aware of it, and it surprises me how many people are not even aware of it in France or in the UK. How long has it been going on in France?
We started on the 17th of November, so it's now 15 weeks. So like a little bit more than 3 months.
Okay. So in Canada here, I think the official beginning of awareness was our convoy that was last week. It started in Alberta, and it had hundreds of transport trucks, people that are out of work because of our oil not being used in Canada. They buy Saudi oil and gas, and instead of using our own resources, we're buying from Saudi Arabia. So it has caused many people to lose their homes and their livelihoods. So the convoy went to Ottawa, to Parliament, and people ended up joining in from coast to coast. Us in Ontario, and I think from coast to coast, support Alberta in this, devastation that they've lost their jobs and their livelihood. Alberta is very important to Canada as far as our economy. Without them, Canada basically has no economy, and it is affecting all of us, because oil's not just goes in automobiles, it goes in everything. This computer we're talking on, our cell phones, our hair products, our clothing, our building materials. It's in everything. So it's a resource that we must use.
So I just get some question like, are you Tracey Lemon, or is it what's your?
Yes.
Yeah, it's Lemon. Yes, yes, Laurie.
Yes, that's what I've known. That is my birth name.
Okay. So guys, if you're coming on board, so Tracey is calling us from Canada and giving us an update about what's happening in Canada, and we're just going to discuss a little bit a few topics. Please share on your page, on many groups, Yellow Vest, so people can have an update of what's happening in Canada. And if you have any comments, please introduce yourself, saying where you're from. So yeah, we can ask her directly questions if you have any questions. So tell us a little bit, we had that conversation this afternoon about you meeting indigenous people in Canada, and what was your first reaction when you met that indigenous people? Because I think this is something that needs to be addressed, and I would like you to share a little bit what was your first reflection, so we can add on a little bit on that.
Okay, the reason why I've been reaching out to the First Nations community is because I'm sure they are quite concerned about the oil lines. So I want to know what their concerns are, and want them to know that they are part of Canada. They are the original history of Canada. And what matters to them matters to us, because it's going to affect all of us, what is happening. So I'm trying to reach out to them to let us know that their concerns we are interested in, and we want to come together to find solutions to it. So the first question that was asked by a personal friend, native friend, was, why do the oil lines always go through the native land? And I thought, wow, that's a good question. So I think this is something that we need to look into. My opinion of that is probably because, the government pushed them around for how many years now? They still can continue to do so. And I feel that's totally unfair, and I think all of us in the movement feel that is unfair.
Yeah, I guess this is something that is not uncommon, because I'm sure everyone remember what happened last year to Standing Rock, and how the Indigenous indigenous in America also stand up against the abuse of the government and trying to rip off people's lands without their authorization. So okay, so what did you say to that guy, like that you met, and what it triggers into you?
Okay. I've been, like I said, I've been trying to reach out to many. There was one gentleman on Saturday in St. Thomas, Ontario, that passed by me during the rally, and I recognized he was a native. So I didn't mind spending a few moments talking to me about the native concerns. And he was very, very pleasant man, and he agreed.
Can you
So
try,
asked,
excuse me, Tracy, can you try stop moving? Like, I don't know if you're moving something, but it makes a lot of parasitic noise. I don't know if it's your hairs or, yeah, it must be your hairs, yeah. Can you try to stay still? Thank you.
anyways, I asked him, again, I addressed the oil lines right away because I think this would be their main concern with what's happening with Canada and how we want the oil line. So I want to know why they may be against it or may be for it. So he again said the natives do not want the oil lines going through their land. And he said to me, compensation is not the answer, because I was wondering, are they getting compensated if they go through the land, and how are they getting compensated? So he said that is not the answer, that the answer is they do not go through the land. So if we could prevent those oil lines going from native lands, I think the natives would be all in favor of the oil, right?
Well, the point about the RIC, the referendum initiated by the citizen, is that it is a remedy for not only powerlessness, but also big issue that we are facing as a nation. It seems that this capitalism system actually drawn every moral value from our society into that competition perspective. And since we are in competition, we have been trained to destroy the weak, which is actually the opposite of what has been building our society for years. Our society has been designed based on supporting the weak and helping them and allowing them to grow, and because that's the right thing to do, because it's too easy to be strong and to destroy what is vulnerable. And I guess, like, and today this is something that is happening as well in France. We have like immigration issues, but the way the socialists deal with immigration in the 70s was to park people in cities, and those cities today are so dangerous that even the police doesn't go there. I don't know if many people knows that, but there's some places in France, especially where I grew up in the south east of France, Marseille. There are some places where the police cannot even go. It's a no zone. It's a place where republic doesn't exist. And I'm sure this is happening a little bit everywhere on Earth. Why? Because we have the same policy applied everywhere on Earth. No matter if you are people who invaded a country and park the indigenous into a space and just told them, like, yeah, guys, we allow you to survive in that space. The way it's happening in France, the way it's happening in America, the way it's happening in Canada, and the way it's happening in Australia as well, is that we allow people to stay there. And it's something that is really unfair and unjust. But as we are on the good side of the line, like, we never really standed for those people, even if moral was actually telling us that those guys deserve just a tiny little bit of land to survive, and they should be happy about that, because we could have exterminated all them. I'm saying we, like, we as colonial city, because I guess France also has its parts of Black history. Like my parents grew up in Algeria. Algeria was a little bit different because like it's like the French came in Algeria in 1830, and when they arrived, there was like something like 1 million Muslim. And when they left, when they gave the independence of Algeria in 64, there was 10 million Muslim. So this gives you an example of how, when you come into a place bringing knowledge and civilized world, there's different way to do it. But the way the English did in the past was that we destroy everything and just let people survive and be happy to survive. The issue that we had for years is that mentality of bully, because that's what it is, like colonialism is bullying, has been accepted and has infiltrated every aspect of our society. And we spoke about that. We spoke about the weak, the old people, the seniors, the handicapped people. Like, what's your thoughts about this?
Well, I definitely think our seniors are mistreated. I think they all should, okay, I'm going to include the veterans in this, because the vets and our seniors built our nation. But yet, they're not being taken care of, again, with the homelessness. There's no affordable housing for either one, as far as to my knowledge. Seniors are being, low-income seniors, or if they have no family that can take care of them, are being forced into government senior homes, retirement homes, where they are mistreated severely. Some have been literally murdered. And I think both the veterans and the seniors should be living tax-free. They've paid their debts to our society. Now, that is a personal opinion. That is mine. But they've paid their dues. They built our nation. So they are number one that should be protected, and also our future. So that's why, like, again, it's a circle, why I'm in this movement. Who built our nation and our future of the nation.
Yeah, and like when we look at those people, no matter if it's the handicapped or the seniors or the indigenous, the first reaction that people would actually have is to basically say, yeah, sorry guys, we didn't pay attention to you, we didn't help you when you needed our help. And like it would be easy actually to use ignorance as a way to say that, like, oh yeah, we haven't been educated at school properly, we haven't been tell us the true history, but the truth is that we know what happens, and we know the way they've been mistreated, and it's not new. Like they are constantly mistreated. And this is something that people need to understand about this current society, that capitalism mentality, that individual system that produce cowards, that produce weak people, that produce sheep, is removing that compassionate nature that used to push us to go towards that simplicity and just hide behind excuses, you know? Like we used to stand for things, we used to fight because life has meaning. But as soon as we've been removed those meanings of our life, then suddenly we're losing also what makes us human. And therefore, like when people are weak and when people are vulnerable, that society teaches us to take that vulnerability and exploit it. And we see that constantly. Like a lot of people are complaining about Wall Street and the finance that says that people are making money on people's misery, you know. But it's not just that. Like the way like cops are beating up French people today is based on the same thing. It's basically people who put their personal interests, like their social status, their financial rewards, above their moral. Okay, this is what's happening in France. Like the moral is pushed behind, and because the moral is pushed behind, people don't give a shit about what's happening to people around us. And instead of just like hiding ourselves behind our finger and say, look, I didn't know, like, sorry, like the school didn't teach me properly. I think it's actually time to own our miserable behavior so far. We complicitly accepted tacitly that situation, and we accepted that years after years. And the Yellow Vest movement, I guess, like is giving a voice to speak against those things that are happening all over the world. Like French people are not an exception. As I said, we didn't invade people. Like we invaded people, we didn't invade France, but we parked the immigrant into spaces, into no governmental zone, and so we behave exactly the same way. And the way the people are treated, exactly as I said, the seniors are mistreated, like the way people who fought for providing spaces for us and allowing that society to exist shouldn't die alone, miserable, parked into buildings where like those guys are a library. They could do a lot of things for us, but we don't even give them a chance. Why? Because there's a business there. There's a business that is there that maintain those people alive as long as they can, so they can take money from them, giving them a miserable life, while the other one are so busy having a career that they don't care. So like basically we are a generation that don't care about the young generation because having a job is so much more important. That's why at 6 months old, babies are just parked into a nurse, and we just hope that the nurse is going to do a good job of a parent. And then we have the older one who are parked into boxes, waiting to die. And we have, in the middle of that, we have the minorities, we have the indigenous, we have like, and the people who were in that zone, that comfortable zone, were like quite happy to do whatever they want because they were not targeted by this situation. Well, the problem with the elite is that they hate humanity. They hate the whole humanity. So they base their principle on pyramidal structure where they are on the top of that structure and everything else is below. So they have absolutely no respect for life, for human, for whatever. And it's now time for people to stand for their life. Like the way we treat animals, for example, like when you look at the way we treat animals, you understand the way we treat children. We understand the way we treat seniors. We understand that it took a while. It took a little while the way it happened. Like initially things were not that bad, but slowly. Like you can judge a civilization the way they treat the weakest aspect of them. And the animals are the weakest aspect of them. The way we slaughter them, the way we grow them is in the worst condition possible just to make meat so people can eat. And you're like, how can you expect having a better society? How can you expect having respectful people, respectful behavior? Because everyone is a part of that problem. Everyone, by being a part of that system, by working, by paying their tax, by being complacent with that system, is also responsible of all this injustice. And now that the injustice is hitting the, let's say, the low middle class or the middle class, now the people are waking up and say, oh shit, now they're coming for me. You know, there's this proverb in France that says, when the fascists came for me, I didn't stand, when the cops came for the fascists, I didn't stand out because I wasn't fascist. When the people came for the communists, I didn't stand up because I wasn't communist. When they came for the poor, I didn't stand up because I wasn't poor. And when they came for me, there was no one else to protect me. And that's exactly what's happening today. That's exactly what's happening because this monstrous capitalism system that is basically killing everything that has value and replace that by money and superficial interest. We let that happen for way too long. So many people just let that happen for way too long. And now that is happening to our face, now that we have to face the consequences of all that, it's not time to hide behind excuses saying, oh, buddy, I didn't know. Like, well, like internet is there for 20 years. It's not like something that just happened 5 years ago or 10 years ago. It's 20 bloody years. Soon it's going to be a whole generation. And we had our time of excuses, waiting for excuses over excuses over excuses to do something. Now we have that opportunity. The RIC is what can give us that voice that couldn't allow us before to transcend reality. I mean, like, even if you were pro indigenous, or if you wanted to have better conditions for the animals and everything, like, politically, the effort that needs to be done to change a whole society mentality takes years, where with the RIC, a referendum initiated by the citizen, people could actually initiate a referendum proving that things needs to be debated and needs to be thought in a good way. Like, can we not take care of our elders in a different way? Like, when we let governments take decisions for us, like, we are responsible of that situation. Why? Because we put the vote into the box. By getting back our right to change the society and to initiate the problem, we can actually fix the situation. So tell us, what's the situation about the Canadian people in relationship to the RIC? Do they understand the RIC?
A lot of people do not know the meaning of referendum.
Mm.
Yes, because I've been asking a lot of people that pass me by, because this is my new sign, referendum. And I can tell when they read the sign if they understand it or not. Most do not. So I ask them, do you know what referendum means? And the majority are saying no. So I just, correct me if I'm wrong on my definition of referendum. I just tell them that gives us the power to vote on each issue that is brought forth in our parliament.
So in Canada, you don't have a referendum ever. Like, the government never asks your opinion, never asks the opinion of the people, ever.
No.
Wow. I didn't know that. Okay, that's interesting.
Like Trudeau, I'm sure you've heard him. I speak for all Canadians. Never
Wow.
asked me what I want, because it sure wouldn't be him standing there.
Wow. So, like, it's amazing. Like, they don't even have to control us anymore. They just remove the words. By removing the words, they remove the concept. By removing the concept, people can even know that they're missing something. They're just like, oh, like, I don't know that word. Like, America has referendum, England has referendum, France has referendum, most of the democracy in the West, and Canada doesn't even have referendum, doesn't even know the concept of referendum. So they live in a democracy where there's never, ever ask their opinion. They only ask to elect their masters. That's it.
And, as far as electing the masters, we don't even have a vote on who they choose as their leader. Do we? People comment. I've never gotten anything to vote on who I would like to be the leader for, we'll say, the Liberal Party, or who I want to be the leader for our new Democratic Party, or PC Party, or the PPC Party. They choose their own.
I think it's the same in Australia. Like, in Australia, they just do their business on their side, and people don't give a shit. It's I guess in France we are a little bit more aware of the election, and we are more like in touch with that space. It didn't protect us from electing a dickhead like Macron, but there are reasons for that. Like, the media are completely controlled by the financial elite, and they just put like that puppet there.
Yes. And more on the puppet. The problem is a lot of people are not aware of the dangers of this UN globalization. And every single one of our candidates for leaders, except for one, is a UN globalist. And people really need to do their own personal research on this and find out who really are these globalist leaders, because they're very deceiving.
Yeah, this is
really wake up.
This is what's happening in France. Like, people are realizing that there's no point now arguing about left and right, because now the veil has been removed and we now see that they're all together. So the question is not about left and right. The question is about globalism and nationalism. And as much as they try to put that word, like nationalism, as something scary, you know, oh, if you're nationalist, you're a Nazi, you know, like, yeah, national socialist, okay, like, but if you're just nationalist, are you still a Nazi? Or every time you think your country needs to belong to the people who live there, you are a fascist? Because fascism is an insult. It's a word that doesn't mean anything anymore. It's like, okay, like Hitler had many aspects in its politics. Like, he wanted to kill Jews. He was a supremacist. He wanted to invade the world. He wanted to conquer. So he was an imperialist. He was also nationalist. He was also socialist. So, like, if we're socialist, are we Nazi? If we're nationalist, are we Nazi? Like, I guess, like, that supremacist, I think now anyone that has a tiny little bit of intelligence can understand that you cannot classify people based on their DNA. It doesn't make sense. But a part of that, it's wicked. Glorifying, look what America is doing. And it's about, like, sending all across the world what's the best of your country, which is a form of imperialism. Okay, like, when we want to bring that modern lifestyle to Africa, we are having imperialistic perspective. So we're all fascist, we're all Nazi. But instead of understanding that concept and saying, like, no, we're not, like, Nazi is, like, it's something that was, like, okay, based on segmentation of race and blah, blah, blah. But we don't analyze those things. There's no critical thinking. It's all based on, and people are like, okay, if you're not from my side, then therefore you're against me. If you're not from left, then therefore you must be from right. So therefore you have to be my enemy. Well, that's exactly what the globalists put in place to divide and conquer. Okay, so, like, they're like, okay, we're just going to segment people between left and right, and we're going to opposite them as much as they can. So therefore, they will not pay attention to the fact that we want to control the world. That's the insanity of those people. They want to control the world. They don't want just to control your life. That's not enough. They want to control your country. They want to control all the countries, and they will never stop until it's going to happen. So when people are telling you what the Yellow Vest is all about, it's all about bringing back common sense. It's all about understanding that we've been mocked and lied for years and years and years. And if we're not standing today, there's not going to be any more humanity. We're all going to be transformed into robots. We're all going to be transformed into slaves. And it's already the case, but it's going to get worse and worse and worse and worse until people are going to stand and being ready to fight for that.
Yes. They have spent, the government and this UN have spent a lot of years brainwashing us and putting labels on all of us to divide us. Racist, nationalist, socialist, anything that ends with an ist.
Yeah, populist.
Okay.
Like, populist is like, oh, but populist means that I'm pro-people. But yeah, so you're populist. And how is it an insult, by the way? Like, I still don't understand. When you stand for the people, you are... So the only insult that they couldn't give us was, oh, you are a Democrat. You're a democratist. Okay? And that's why suddenly in France, what's happening based on we're all citizens. Okay? So they tried to give us all a name. Like, they call us totalitarian. They call us terrorists. They said, like, the Yellow Vest are Talibans. Yes. They said that we are extreme right, extreme left, and I don't know if you heard about that, but last week, now we are anti-Semitic. Why? Because there was 2 guys who insulted a guy that just came to a protest, and he's, like, the most racist intellectual people from, like, he's Jew, but, like, the guy said, yeah, you are Zionist, and they criticized the Zionism. But no, suddenly 2 people openly said you're a Zionist, and that's not okay. So suddenly the whole Yellow Vest was anti-Semitic. And yeah, we just laugh at it now, because now I think the only thing that we have is that we are pedophile, we are satanist, and the last thing is probably we're going to have to be reptilian, eating children and whatever, you know, like that's the last thing that they got against us, because they tried everything else already. And
you know what? If people want to know who the real pedophiles are, pay attention to that C-75 film. How they've lessened, you know, the assaults against children, the murders and the rapes against children. The liberals, the NDP, liberals, NPC, all signed in favor for this, people, to lessen the charges against our children.
yeah, in France, they did that differently. They now are thinking about allowing sexual intercourse up to as young as 12 years old. And it's going to be legal now to have sexual relationship with a 12 years old. So like, I guess if now they're 12, probably in 5 years, it's going to go down to 6 or 5 or something like that. So that's what's happening. And if you guys believe that this is okay, if you guys believe that the way the society is going, and we let them, by our inaction, we let them do whatever they want. As soon as people hear about the word referendum, as soon as they hear about the word initiative, because in the RIC words like referendum initiated by the citizen, the key word is not that much referendum. It's initiative. It's we want the initiative of what we want to implement into our legal structure. We are done allowing the people in power to have only that initiative to start whatever they want, whenever they want. We want the same. We as citizens, as people, we want the right to change the system from ourselves. And if they don't want that, like they cannot criticize, they cannot qualify that as non-democratic. This is democracy. Democracy, demos, kratos, demos, people, kratos, the power. The power to the people. How can we exert the power for the people? We cannot allow one person from the people to take every decision. So then we need to organize ourselves to allow laws to emerge from us. So then they can be implemented directly into the legal structure. Okay, very simple idea. Everyone that has a tiny little bit of intelligence should be able to understand that. Should be able to say, yes, this is what we need.
I want to say one more thing about seniors and our vets.
Sure.
And our politicians. Politicians in Canada only have to serve 8 years, and they have tax-free pension equaling a year's wage. So let's just take the number $150,000. Let's say they make $150,000, which that's probably a low number, but I'm just using it. They get that after serving 8 years tax-free. Did our veterans get that? They laid their life on the line. What do our politicians do? Are they laying their life on the line? They're just acting in Parliament against each other where they're all in it together. And yet they get this pension after 8 years tax-free. And our veterans live on the street with post-traumatic stress disorder. And they're not being taken care of. I don't know about Canada-wide, but in Ontario, they closed almost all of our mental hospitals. So where are these veterans getting taken care of? Where are our mentally ill supposed to be taken care of? That's why homelessness has grown tremendously. But again, like I say, you know, there's so much that personally upsets me, but these are the major things that really upset me. Is how can someone simply work 8 years as being a MP or an MPP, either in Ottawa or Toronto, work 8 years and get a pension handed to them tax-free?
Well,
people that actually went to war don't have that. It's been taken away from them. I a gentleman at one of the Canadian Royal Legions here in London that takes care of our homeless veterans. And I asked him, what has been taken away? And he said it started back in 2006 when Harper was still in. Their pension was taken away. Now they get a flat rate of he said it's about $250,000 they get instead of a pension. So if this is a young man that went to war, let's say in Afghanistan, and he was 30 at the time and is now 40, he gets $250,000 for the rest of his life. That's it, $250,000. And if he lives to 80 years old, that's 40 years he has to live with only $250,000. How is that right? He went to war and had his life threatened and was willing to do it for us, supposedly. Sorry, that's getting a little bit further. But
well, this is a whole different discussion, like, because the first discussion in place would be, why do we need an army that is not there just to protect the country? Like, why do we need an army that is going outside of our boundaries to, for whatever reason, to support whatever agenda? This is maybe the first discussion that we should have. And why in this army we never find any kids from the people in power? That's another very interesting topic. Okay, they never send their own kid in war. They always send others' kids in war. That's why it's so easy for them to make decisions, you know? So before even asking why veterans don't even have enough money to survive, like, well, maybe we should first ask, why did we need that many veterans? Like, why do we need, especially when you look at in America, like the budget, the military budget over the last, I'm saying 20 years, 4 years, but we can even look at the 200 or 400 years. The money that they spent in military for the last 400 years is unimaginable. Like, if the people knew how much money has been spent, not just to protect your own territory, but to actually go outside and get involved into others' business, like, well, like, you like, all those questions needs to be challenged. Like, do we really have to have an army that is going outside our territory? Like, when you look at the way Russia is managing, like, Russia never expanded. They just protect their boundaries, and they do that really well. And they have like a budget that is a 20th of the American one. And they only use, like, recently with Syria and Libya and a little bit in different war around the country, but it's not that they're not like sending military bases all over the world. And like, why are we not operating this way? Like, and I'm not talking about France as well. Like, we would have 100 times less veterans to feed if we were just using that energy to build instead of destroying. So yeah, let's not get too deep into that topic. But the point that you're saying is true. The only reason why those people are paid the amount that you said is basically simply because we do not stop them. That's as simple as that. We do not stop them. As soon as we do not stop them, they do whatever they want. And they call that democracy. They call that democracy with all our sympathy. Like, we all, oh yeah, you know what, like, that's fine. You know, like, we just recently heard that senators in France are having something like 15,000 euros. I think it's $25,000 a month retirement. Like, people don't even know, like, those numbers is like, what, 25,000 Australian dollars a month retirement because you've been senators a few years. And of course, who voted this law? They voted the law for themselves. And we were complacent enough to let this happen because that's what people do today. They're weak, they're cowards, they just hide themselves behind excuses. And one of the reasons why I wanted to stand and share that message for the world is that no more excuse. No more excuses. Time to face our responsibility. Time to do something. We can't hide anymore behind fake excuses of, oh, or I wasn't strong enough. Now it's time to own it. It's time to own our responsibility, and it's time to act and regain that fuck, sorry, I forgot this word. Not that moral, that not responsibility, that honor, that value, that makes us feel good, like that respect for ourselves. You know, there's a lady. I'm just going to end up on that story. There's a lady in France, in a very tiny little village, and she was like, in a village, everyone thought she was stupid and she was insignificant. She was like 60, 65 years old. She's just the funny one, let's say, the funny one of the village. And something happened during the protest, and she insulted a cop. And oh wow, the cop are right to beat up people, but if you insult them, oh wow, this is outrageous. So she had to go to the court, and she's just like that tiny little lady that doesn't really talk, that doesn't really say anything. And she came to the trial, and the judge says, okay, do you have anything to say about your attitude and your actions? And suddenly the lady stand up, look straight in the eye, like she'd look at the judge and say, for the first time in my fucking life, I'm feeling alive. And everyone was just like, what? Like that tiny little old lady, that funny one, that she just stand, and everyone had goosebumps in the place. They were like, whoa, something is happening.
There. A friend of mine told me those are not goosebumps, those are true bumps.
Yeah. and I'd like to share that story because it tells a lot. It tells a lot, like 60, 65 years old, and for the first time in her life, she feels alive. She feels standing for moral, for value, for meaning, for something that is bigger than her. And this is happening all over France. Little people that never really did anything politically, that never had their voice listened, that never engaged in any way, shape, or form, suddenly are standing up and feel alive. And I guess this is a message that needs to be shared with the world. Like, it's time to feel alive. It's time to bring meaning back behind our actions. Stop just being a consumer. Stop being an elector. Become a voter. Become a citizen. Become an active citizen that just doesn't put a paper into a piece of vote. And if you have to piss off, and if you have to get angry, and if you have to be non-political correct, that's fucking fine. That's fucking fine. It's coming from the heart. It's there to change the world, and we need now to own it. It's time to own it. It's time to stand for what we are, to be proud of ourselves, and to make the change that we had to do for years. Why? Because no one else than us is going to do it. No one else. Thank you very much, Tracey, for being with us tonight. One last word. Do you want to say one last word?
Sure. I think a lot of this, going back to how you were saying, how we didn't pay attention to other issues, like our native here, the native here in Canada, etc. I think it's human nature for us not to take notice until it happens to oneself. And that's where the compassion has to be. You have to become aware of what is happening to other people and have the compassion before it happens to you. That's my final word. Just open your eyes, people. Do a lot of research. Please research deeply.
And don't be afraid to shake those who are afraid of standing and changing the mindset. Like even if it's a relative, even if it's someone from your family, don't be afraid to shake them, because if you can't do that for them, who will? Okay, that's very, very important. That if someone in your family is like saying something that doesn't resonate with your moral, like, it is time to act and to. Thank you very much, Tracey. Lots of love to Canadian people. And please, guys, if you like that video, please share it into all your network. We need those words and those ideas to be spread far, far wild across the world. Like, we need more people to understand that it is possible, it is happening. We just need to stand together. All right. Thank you very much.